give you the chance for an interesting evening.
So thank you very much for this kind introduction, Christian. So you see me now how it looks like when we are middle in a Corona crisis, I think. Without here, you can see. So I can also just shut down the picture so you can really concentrate yourself on the sheets. If you want to see me on the video, you can also look webinars before, because we got there with the video also. But tonight I will also close the video because I'm a little bit afraid because of the internet connection, that the internet connection can get weaker when we have this video connection. So thank you for the introduction, Christian. So like Christian said, for many years in this microbiome topic, like 12 years ago, it was my beginning. In this area, in the last 10 years, we had a big bunch of new science results because we made a lot of studies in the whole world with the topic microbiome. At least microbiome and liver, microbiome and the lung system, microbiome and the immune system. And what we've seen in these studies is that the gut health is really important for our constitution, for our health situation. Not only for the intestinal health, it's also really important also for our immune system, for our skin conditions, and also for our hormone system. Today we have a little less time to talk over all topics, so I thought I brought you some nice topics for today and for this evening. If you need any further informations, please feel free to contact me or MikroVeda to get some works or some answers for your questions. I have also a practice for intestinal health promotion in Graz, in Austria. It's in the department in Styria. Some of you maybe know Styria. There I have the pleasure to work with persons to restore the gut health via probiotics, prebiotics, micronutrients, and so on. It's also important for me to make stool analysis. Why stool analysis? In stool analysis, we can see the acute situation from the microbiome, but also from the mucosa. For example, we have two really important parameters. They are called zonulin and alpha-1 antitrypsin, which can show you in which condition is the mucosa. Is the mucosa damaged, like in a leaky gut? Some of you maybe heard this word or this vocabulary. Leaky gut. Leaky gut is a damaging in the cell structure of the mucosa. And when you have this cell structure damages, it's also possible to get more allergies or more reactions on food, maybe on carbs, but also on proteins and so on. So it's not like an allergy, because when you have an allergen reaction, then you have a reaction which is really fast. You eat something which you react with an allergy, then you get a complete reaction in some seconds or some minutes. When you have an intoleration problem, it can also be depend when you eat it and how much do you eat. Sometimes the symptoms are coming 48 hours later after you eat some food that is not in your tolerant schema. So you see that it's really important to look a little bit more on the gut health. We have many different ways to become our health, because every of you is individual, and like you are individuals, you have individual food, you have individual lifestyles, like how much stress you have, and you have also committed microbiomes. Just 9% of our whole microbiome we share with each other. Over 90% is absolutely individual. So it's really hard to say that we have one bacteria which is really important. It's not important to have one or two or three bacteria. It's important to have a lot of bacteria. We call this multidiversity. This multidiversity is important because these bacteria have different functions. And to make these different functions, you need a bunch of bacteria and a lot of different strains. So it's not necessary to build up only bifidobacteria or only lactobacills or only colibacteria. It's really important to build up all our physiological bacteria. And so you can see one problem we have with normal probiotics, because normal probiotics just work like they give you bacteria and they hope that these bacteria will implant in your colon. But mostly it's not possible. Why it's not possible? Because we have some factors when bacteria can implementate in the mucosa. For example, the pH value. The pH value is important to make a difference between physiological bacteria and pathogens or non-physiological bacteria. We have also to make a difference between pathogen bacteria, which every time make diseases like chronic fatigues or chronic inflammations, and we have the group of bacteria which are unphysiological. Why unphysiological? Because the number of these bacteria is too high. We need a lot of physiological bacteria to stabilize the situation in our colon. And when we have this number of physiological bacteria, then they control the milieu in the colon. And when they can control the milieu, it's maybe like maybe some 5 or 7 or 10% risk that you can get some other pathogen bacteria like Salmonella or like Campylobacter or Shigella also. You know, this bacteria is mostly from travel disease. When you have these travel diseases like liquid stool, then mostly it's a Salmonella or Shigella which makes this. The colon is absolutely fantastic, and the intestinal work is an absolutely wonder. Why? Because the colon got a lot of functions. For example, the utilization and absorption of nutrition. But this begins not in the colon, this begins in our mouth. So you see, it's also important not only what you eat, it's also important how you eat. How often do you chew? How often you get the sputum in the food? And how slow do you eat? The most problems in our modern times we have because people don't have this normal biological lifestyle. They have a lot of stress. They eat also stressy, so they don't have time to eat. In the southern Europe, so like in Greece and Italy, we have this problem not as hard like in Austria or in Germany. In Austria and Germany, it's more a regulation that you eat really fast. In Greece and in Italy, in Spain, in the southern European countries, it's more not only to eat because we have to eat, it's more a feeling. So you have more time, and please take your time for the food utilization, the observation. In the colon, we have also the highest metabolic rate. 10 or 20 years ago, we thought that the liver has the highest metabolic rate. Now we know since like 7 or 8 years, and we saw in some studies that the whole microbiome in the colon got a 3 times higher metabolic rate as the liver. So you can see when we have a bad metabolic rate, bad metabolization, like when we have too much fermentation bacteria, or when we have too much putrefaction bacteria, we have a lot of metabolic substances which are produced in a such high rate that they can damage the mucosa. We have, for example, in the putrefaction, we have toxins which are produced. We call these toxins, for example, cadaverine. Cadaverine is a toxin which is built when the body is dead, normally. When you have a lot of putrefaction bacteria, it can also happen in your living colon, because the bacteria rebuild proteins, and when they metabolize these proteins, they they metabolize also substances. Normal physiological bacteria do that also, but they don't produce toxins which are influence our health in a bad way. For example, bifidobacteria can also build toxins, but these toxins are especially against some other bacteria. So these bifidobacteria which are in your colon, they also fight against other bacteria, other bad bacteria, which can make diseases, or they make a lot of putrefaction or too much fermentation. A little less putrefaction and fermentation is normal, because the bacteria they also support us in the utilization absorption of nutrition. Mostly in the special case when you eat too fast and when you chew too less, because chewing is the first step of our metabolization. When you don't chew and you have, for example, too less stomach acid, then the proteins cannot break up. So the whole proteins comes into the colon, and the bacteria have to rebuild and break up these proteins, because this is the function of these bacteria. When they are in a normal number, then it's not really a problem. They can only support us. When the situation goes on and on and on and on, or you eat a lot of proteins, or you have this dysbiosis right now, which were too much putrefaction bacteria, then you have the problem that they are also producing toxins and other substances which have to rebuild from the liver. So it's not only a damage for the mucosa and for the colon himself, it's also a damaging process for the liver. Now we know that 25% of all fat liver disease patients don't drink alcohol. So they have a non-alcoholic liver disease. This comes from alcohol, which is produced in your colon from too much fermentation bacteria. Fermentation bacteria are also important, but just in a little number. So you have to have milk acid bacteria like lactobacilli and bifidobacteria. You have to have putrefaction bacteria and fermentation bacteria, but in a lesser number. You have to have also colibacteria, enterococcus. These are bacteria which have a lot of influence on your immune system. We see in studies when these bacteria are reduced, the immune system cannot work anymore in this normal function that you have to. You see also on this sheet that the GALT, this is the gastrointestinal associated lymphatic system, represents 80% of our whole immune cells. So you see 80% of your immune cells were built in the colon. When the bacteria and the immune system cells can't communicate with each other, or the communication is disturbed because of a bunch of bad bacteria in the colon, then the immune system went down, down, and down. So it's probably also a part of atopic disease. And we see this also in studies. When you have two less lactobacilli and two less bifidobacteria, the number of possibilities that you have an atopic disease like an allergy, like neurodermitis or also psoriasis, it's went higher and higher. We see also that children which are sexual birth, so they can't get in a normal way on our world, like on the vaginal way, they have also an 80% higher rate to get allergies or other atopic disease like also asthma. The first studies in this topic were made in the 80s. Just in the 20 and 21 years, we have new studies which are specified on these topics. The most of them were made in the Netherlands. I know from a study leader which had made a study in Maastricht in the hospital of Maastricht, and they saw that that sexual birth have a lot higher prevention that they get atopic disease, and this was a long-term study. It's not a study that they see the new birth and they tested the new birth. No, the study went on for about 10 years. The study started in 2003 and was ended in 2013. So we have also long-term results, and we see that the results were also accepted. The bacteria have also another really important function. This is called the resistance to colonization. It's mostly easy to show you in a game for children. I don't know if you know it in Greece. It's called in Austria Travel to Jerusalem. It's mostly you have 5 children and 4 chairs. The children are running around the chairs, and when the music stops, every child has to go on the chair. The one who can't get a chair is the loser and have to get out of the game. Then you reduce the chairs. So you have every time 1 chair lesser than children. It's like in our colon. When our colon is really good colonized with good bacteria, with a high bunch of bifidobacteria, lactobacilli, coli, but not in a biovare form. It's a species form. This is really important because they have also important influences of our immune system in our immune system, and also enterococcus and other bacteria. It's really hard for other bacteria like pathogen bacteria to settle on the mucosa. So they travel through the colon and get out of the colon with the stool. Normally, you get with your stool 2 or 3 grams of bacteria. Hopefully, there are dead bacteria or bacteria we don't need, like unphysiological bacteria or pathogen bacteria. But you just know it when you are atopic, asymptomized, or when you have a stool analyze in front of you that can show you what there is. So this is a picture of a good physiological intestinal flora. This is a good microbiome in an electron microscopical picture. You see that the bacteria are really close together and also on top of each other. They built a wall between the outside world and the mucosa. So they have also a really good secure function. They it's like a bodyguard for the mucosa. Bacteria are bodyguards for the mucosa not only because they are here and they pretend the mucosa. No, they can also neutralize toxins and other substances which can also be bad for our body. So bacteria, they have a lot of function. When they are in a good shape, they look like this in an electron microscopical picture. The most of my patients didn't have this intestinal microbiome. The most of them has some called like dysbiosa. This is called a eubiosa, a good build-up microbiome. When you have this good build-up microbiome, then the microbiome can make all the functions that will be great and necessary for our health. Normally, your body should be, or your intestinal should be good okay with bacteria. At the beginning in the mouth, we have in the mouth a really high number of bacteria and germs. In the stomach, we have really less, like 10A1, and the number of bacteria just went on down in the small intestine. And in the colon, we have the highest number of germs and bacteria. You see, in the small intestine, we have just about 2% of our whole microbiome lives there. The most part of our microbiome is living in the colon. And so we have the most problems also in the colon. When you have a gas building bacteria, you often feel it in the upper belly or in the lower belly or on the sides. Really less number of patients have problems in the small intestine, so you feel it around your belly. It can be that the small intestine alone gets a problem, but when you have problems in the small intestine, it's oftenly also compared with a problem in the colon because the bacteria make the colonization from the mouth on. So they went through the mouth, through the stomach, and went into small intestine. We have everyday colonization with bacteria, but mostly you have a united bacteria. They also depend on your food and on your factors. So it's not really a genetic factor, it's an epigenetic factor. The bacteria and the concentration of the bacteria are depending on food, on the supplements, on your lifestyle, how much stress you have, and also which food you give your bacteria, because we have to make a difference about food for me and food for the bacteria. Food for the bacteria is called prebiotics. These prebiotics are mostly complex carbos, which aren't rebuilt from our intestine. They are breaking up from the bacteria because they give the bacteria a lot of energy and also supplements that they need, because bacteria also want to eat and they also need this energy. And when they metabolize these carbons, for example, they produce small side acids. These acids, the small chain acids, are really important for our nerve cells, for example. We see it in the studies of patients with morbus Alzheimer or morbus Parkinson. These patients have a less number of these small chain fatty acids. These small chain fatty acids are produced from our bitter producer. Bitter is a special small acid. Um, it's a sorry. So they are built from the bitter builder because they produce these small fatty acid chains. These small fatty acid chains are not only important for our brain or for our morbus Alzheimer or morbus Parkinson, these are also important for the energy level of our mucosa cells. So we need these also for our mucosa. When you get a less number of this bitter builder, you have also a less number of small fatty chain acids, because then you have this rebuilding from the carbons, not anymore. So it's really important also to eat healthy food. Ideal, the most of my patients always ask, what is a perfect nutrition for me? The perfect nutrition is not for everybody the same, because you have to take a look on your microbiome, you have to take a look on your enzyme activity also, because there are some people who can metabolize proteins better than carbs, and there have some persons who can carbs better metabolize than proteins. So you have also take a look on this. But what we always can see, when you have this dysbiosis and you have more gases when you eat, for example, proteins, then it's mostly effective for the putrefaction bacteria. So you have to eat less proteins. The same example is for the fermentation bacteria. When you have too much fermentation bacteria, it's not really good to eat a lot of sugar or carbs, because the sugar and carbs can be rebuilt to alcohol structures, which can damage the mucosa in a hard way. For example, they can also make inflammation signs. Mostly we call them small inflammations, like small colitis. This colitis is not really good to see. For example, in a colonoscopy, you need a stool analyze, which are made the parameter of zonulin, alpha-1 antitrypsin, and also calprotectin to know if there is an inflammation or not. These normal physiological bacteria, when they have a good intestinal health, they can protect you against many diseases, also against viral diseases, because, for example, lactobacilli can make proteins which docks on the virus membrane and make them or they can inactivate the virus. It's not a 100% ability. Mostly the bacteria can inactivate virus, but when you have a high number of virus, then it's not possible anymore to neutralize these. So when we take a look on our now actual situation with the coronavirus, it's not we have no studies. We have no studies that we see that lactobacilli can inactivate, for example, coronavirus. But we see that, for example, influenza virus can be inactivated. We see some conclusions, for example, in a study which was made in Hong Kong at the beginning of the corona problem. We saw in the study that persons with a bad microbiome status are they have more severe corona disease progressions and they have aggressive progressions, for example. People with a good built microbiome, they have mostly these non-symptomatic diseases. We don't have a meta study. We have 3-4 studies, not only the Hong Kong study, but we have also 3-4 other studies who shows us the same things. But it's really hard to say that it's not the solution. It's not the solution against the coronavirus when it's activated, but it's a solution in the first way, in a protective way against virus and other bad bacteria. So when your microbiome is good, build it, then the chance that the viral problem will get up or bacterial disease get up is lesser than in persons which they have a bad microbiome constellation. We see also that problems are building vitamins like vitamin K, or they build other vital substances like these little short chain acids and other really important vital substances. They don't only help us to get our important nutrition, they also build vital substances for our health. They also produce, for example, chemical messengers to cooperate and to communicate with our immune system. So when we have this good communication with our physiological bacteria and the immune system, the chance of getting allergies, hay fever, asthma, neurodermitis, or psoriasis is getting lesser and lesser. When you got already allergies, we see in some science work and also in my ordination, I can see it every spring, that the persons who will work over winter on the microbiome, they have lesser reactions on allergy determinations. Also, it's the same with high fever and asthma diseases. We see also that these bacteria, because they build like a wall for the mucosa, they can protect the mucosa from damage due to stress. Stress makes always inflammations. Most inflammations on our mucosa. These inflammations are getting lesser, or the chance of inflammations are getting lesser when the microbiome is in a good conspiracy way. So when you have a lot of lactobacilli, bifidobacteria, in a different strain way, not only just one lactobacilli or one bifidobacteria, you need a bunch of different strains. Then you have a really good function. And it can reduce inflammations, because inflammation is a function of our immune system. And it's really necessary when you have a wound. In the beginning of a wound, you have always an inflammation, because with the inflammation, the wound get substances they need to rebuild structures. Like when you have a scratch on your skin, then we have inflammation who flushes in B vitamins, for example, to close this wound, to close this scratch. When the microbiome is in a top situation, then it also a feeling of well-being, and it's also a really good factor for the death of sleeping. The most people which have problems with the microbiomes are sometimes like gases or liquid stool or constipation, and when you have this a longer time, it's also a factor that you can't fall asleep anymore, not in a normal, easy way, because the hormone serotonin is also built in the colon. And when it's not built in the colon, we have a less number of serotonin in our brain. Serotonin is rebuilt into melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone for our sleep level. It's necessary to fall asleep. And when you have too less serotonin and too less melatonin, then you have the problem that it's really hard to fall asleep. So with a good microbiome, you have a good buildup of serotonin in the colon, so a really good number of serotonin or good level of serotonin in the brain, and a good level of rebuilding melatonin out of the serotonin. So the sleep system or the sleeping system is get involved also in our colon health. And it improves also the appearance of the skin. Skin condition is always, the most people said skin is a mirror of the colon. When the colon got some damages, also the skin got some damages. We see it in the acne problems from adults. When you have this adult acne, it's mostly also a problem in the colon. We have studies made in Italy where we saw that the most people who got this parental this acne form, this specialized acne form, then you have also a problem with the microbiome in form of building false substances out of putrefaction or fermentation. So when you have a good microbiome and good bacteria, it's really good because it protects you against a lot of problems. But the most of the people I met in my ordination, so they have not really a good build-up microbiome. They have mostly a thing called dysbiosis. It's a not good build-up microbiome. They have less bifidobacteria, they have less lactobacilli, they have less colibacteria, they have less enterococci. The reasons for this dysbiosis are as simple as they are in our modern world. It's our modern lifestyle, it's malnutrition, it's also the problem with how you eat, how fast do you eat, how lot do you choose. It's also a problem and the fact of long-term medication. One of the standard medications in Austria, for example, is the stopper of stomach acid. It's protein pump stopper. We have also the problem today with pathogenic or non-physiological germs. We have physiological germs like Candida albicans is an Candida form which is normal in your colon, but also in a less way. You don't need as much as the most people have. So when you have a high number of non-physiological pathogen germs in your colon, it's, for example, also a problem by women that they have then also vaginal problems, like vaginal germs or vaginal candida. It's also mostly called candidiasis. When you have this residual problems, this every time coming problems like vaginitis, then it's also necessary to take a look on the colon and on the microbiome in the colon, because the bacteria in the colon, they are like a reserve team for the bacteria in the vaginal tract. When the bacteria in the vaginal tract get lesser because of an antibiotic intake, then it's also a part of the colon microbiome to rebuild this vaginal microbiome out of bacteria which were in your colon. So when you have the wrong bacteria in your colon, you have also now the wrong bacteria in the vaginal tract. And this can influence inflammations or other problems in the urinary tract. Also, extreme situations like, don't know, illnesses, for example, stress, for example, but also a pregnancy can be an extreme situation for your body and can also make a problem with the microbiome, because every extreme situation can end in an inflammation situation. When you have an inflammation situation in your colon or on the mucosa, you have the problem that it's not the right milieu for the bacteria to live there. They need some important factors. This one factor is the pH value. The pH value in the colon must be acidly. The temperature, the condition of your mucosa, and the mucus. When there is too less mucus, the bacteria have no chance to implantate in this bacteria. And also the bacteria which are in your colon, when they split up and when they rebuild themselves, the rebuilded bacteria have not the chance to take this part of mucosa because there is the inflammation. Inflammation is always a really big disturber for the mucosa rebuild. So when you have a problem with intake of probiotics or so on, and it's not really the result you want, so maybe you have also a problem with the mucosa. And for the mucosa health, we need mostly amino acids like glutamine, we need the B vitamins, we need zinc. Zinc is really good to reduce inflammations, for example. B vitamins you need always to rebuild structures, and you need also glutamine to rebuild structures. But it's nothing when the pH value is not in a stable way, because stabilization of the pH value is normally a function of the lactobacilli and the bifidobacteria. When we have these situations, these problems for the gut, we have a hand-in-hand going problem. Because of the inflammation, we have reduction of lactobacilli and bifidobacteria. When we have this reduction of bifidobacteria and lactobacilli, we have a less number of building milk acid or other acids, which are important to stabilize our pH value in the colon. So you see, this hand-in-hand going problem is only solved when you also take a look on the pH value and when you also stabilize the pH value. I'm a biologist. From my biological way, it's always the important factor to take influence on the situation in the colon over the pH value. Maybe most of you already worked with fermented products. These fermented products, they have a really good acid work for the colon. But the problem is when it's not a controlled fermentation, you have also histamine. Histamine can also make a problem because when you have a lot of histamine, you can also get this intolerance reaction. It's not really an HIT like an histamine intolerance, but it's a reaction. Stress leads also to inflammatory processes, like we said, and that it makes also when you have this inflammatory processes in the colon, the gut-brain axis is also disturbed. The gut-brain axis is the communication between our brain and our colon nerve system. We knew now that the nerve system and the colon, they have the whole number, the same number of nerves like we have in the brain. The colon and your intestinal works on her own. They don't need some advices from the brain. The colon, the stomach, the liver, the pancreas, they work on their own because they have an own nerve system, they have an own and high number of immune system. They have so much work and they are not dependent on the brain. They communicate with each other, but the brain do not say, okay, colon, you have to work faster or slower. These are things that the colon makes on himself. Yes, when you have the most of my patients, they have not one factor, they have mostly 2, 3, or all factors we have seen in the sheet before. But when you have these factors that leads to trouble, that leads to flatulences, like these are gases in the colon, they change the bowel movements, they lead to diarrhea or constipation. Both is a problem. Diarrhea is a problem because it makes inflammation on the mucosa. Constipation is a problem because it can build diverticle. So it looks like a dysbiosis. This is a bad buildup, a microbiome. You can see a lot of germ, for example, and you see a lot of free places in the mucosa. And these free places in the mucosa is a sign for maybe colonization of bad bacteria, or it can be also a sign of a high inflammation rate of the mucosa. So you can see this inflammation maybe because it's on the cell structure or between the cell structure. So it's not always good only to make a colonoscopy or endoscopy. It's better to make a stool analysis and an endoscopy to see one time on the optical way what is wrong in the colon, and on the other hand, you see on the parameters what is in the cellular way or on the microbial way, which problems are there. In the stool analysis, we can also note the pH value. When you have an acidic pH value, it's a sign for fermentation processes. These fermentation processes can also make a problem with the liver, because when you have an own alcohol production in your colon, it's clear that the liver is had to work too much and can be weak, not only weak, but they can also get into a disease because of an inflammatory process. When the most patients but don't have an acidic pH value or too much acidic pH value, they have mostly an alkaline pH value. This alkaline pH value is the result of the putrefaction processes in the colon, mostly from Enterobacter or too much coli or too much other bacteria which are normal in the putrefaction way. When you have too much putrefaction, it's the problem that you have a damage of the mucosa membrane because the substances are really aggressive. We have substances like toxins which are built, and also sulfites we also built. The sulfites can also make headaches. Most of you don't see the combination between heart problems or headaches and the colon, but we see it because there are built substances which can make this brain or headaches. It's also included the migraine. The migraine is also a problem of mostly false builded substances in the colon which were intaken from the mucosa, and so we have to regulate the alkaline pH value to make it more acidly. We have to rebuild the microbiome, so we have to give in active bacteria who can also fight against pathogen bacteria, fight against non-physiological bacteria to reduce the number of the non-physiological bacteria. It's a tongue breaker sometimes. The consequences are manifold. So like I said, migraine, it's gut inflammation, atopic diseases, chronic fatigue and laxation, sleep disorders, liver problems, maldigestions and intolerances. Maldigestions are mostly the highest number of intolerance symptoms. And the maldigestions are mostly also as they have a slow reaction. Mostly we have the reaction 48 hours, 12 to 24 to 48 hours after intake of the maldigestion food. And it reduces the stress regulation. So when we have a less number of good bacteria, it's also the chance of mucosal damage because of stress getting higher, higher, and higher. So it's really, really, really important to build up and to influence in a positive way our physiological microbiome. If not, we have also bowel associated problems like infections of the vagina, like we said, cystitis, chronic and recurrent respiratory infects. This respiratory infects I saw in my ordination, because I have my ordination is in a medical center in Graz. We have also there a respiratory expert, and we saw when we also take care of the microbiome, this chronic and recurrent respiratory infects are getting lesser and less, and also the recurrence getting lesser. Also, bad posture and pain in the muscular system, according to F.X. Meyer. F.X. Meyer was an Austrian doctor. You know it maybe from the F.X. Meyer medicine. This picture on the right side of your sheet is from him personally. And he said when the people have problems with the stomach or with the bowel or with the colon, they always get into a problem with the physiological structures, with muscles, with your back, for example. Most of my patients also said when we reduce the gas conspiration, we also reduce the pain in the back because we reduce the pressure from the colon on the back. So when you have back problems and also gases, then please take a look on your microbiome. For today, I have a little example on the problem of constipation, because constipation is one of the most problems, and we have a really high black number because the most persons didn't go to a consultation only because of constipation. The most people are saying, this is for me normal. I have this for my whole life, so it's normal for me. It's not normal. It's also not normal if you hurt yourself with a hammer. It makes it not normally because you make it every day. The normal situation should be that you have everyday stool in a sausage, in a pretty sausage form, and the best sign is when you don't need any paper after your toilet visiting. When you have this problem with constipation, chronic diseases are promoted because these chronic diseases are also influenced by these inflammatory processes that comes with the constipation. Obesity is also pre-programmed because it's not necessary, it's not normal for your body to reduce energy. So it keeps the fat cells to take care of the energy. Fat cells are just energy for the body in emergency situations. It's like an emergency energy, and the fat cells just were built down when the body, when your health, when your brain don't have any emergency signs like diseases or like other problems. Constipation makes inflammation. Inflammation makes also that the fat cells can break up, so the body build more in these fat cells in, so the obesity is mostly pre-programmed. The problem which I see in my ordination is mostly that the people take laxatives. Laxatives are good when you have an acute problem with constipation, for example. You didn't go to toilet for 5 days, for example, then you need a laxative to flush the stool out of the colon. But the problem is that you do not only flush out the stool, you also flush out vital substances. So it's not possible for your body anymore to take in the vital substances. So it's not really a thing for every day. It's just laxatives are only for acute problems. When you got 4, 5, 6 days no stool, then it's absolutely necessary to take a laxative. But in all other problems, when you just have 2 or 3 days no stool, or you have a little constipation and it's hard to get out the stool because the stool is really hot, first take control over the liquid. How much do you drink? We have a rule. Per kilogram you weight, you need 30 milliliters of neutral liquids like water. Not wine, not snaps, not anything like alcohol, just liquids like water, neutral liquids, because neutral liquids are really important also for our body and ourselves, but this is an other topic. The consequences of chronic indigestions or constipation is also like you see in the sheet, that you have a pollution, a stool pollution on the mucosa. And the stool pollution, when you have over some days the constipation, the colon seeks out the liquid from the stool. So the stool gets harder and harder, and it mineralized at the end. So affix Meyer doctor, for example, the medicines call it stool stones. Because of this mineralization, they get really like a stone, like hard like a stone. And in Austria, we say they are little stool balls like from a rabbit. When you have these little stool balls like a rabbit, it's mostly a problem from too less liquid. So please get higher your liquid level per day, and not just on one point of the day. You have to take the liquid over the whole day, like you begin in the morning and end in the evening, not just at midday. You see, oh damn, I forgot to drink today, so I have to drink 2 liters right now. This is not the good way, because it's not ending in the colon. It don't makes any concern of the colon. It makes just more problems, because the colon is there also necessary to reduce the liquid from the stool. Cannot work with this. The second problem in this constipation problem is not only the pollution from the stool and the self-toxification in this part. It also makes diverticular. Diverticular is a problem in the colon, which bunches out the mucosa out of the muscle formation, and it makes like a cave. And in this cave, it's possible that stool rat can get in. And when the stool is in this diverticula, it's hard because mostly I named it in Latinum and not in English. In this diverticula, we have the problem that when they fill up with stool, it's really needed that they inflammate really quick. So when you have an inflammation of this diverticula, then it's called a diverticulitis. This diverticulitis is a problem because when you have 3 diverticulitis in 1 year, it's mostly the advice to go to the hospital to cut out the piece of colon with the diverticula on it. It's not really good because you lose a part of your colon, which is really important for the function of your health. And it's also a problem because you get a scar on the mucosa where the bacteria cannot settle down. And because it's easier to make a progressive way to clean the colon, to support our microbiome to stabilize the pH value, it's important to make also a colon cleanse. But what is a perfect colon cleanse? In a perfect colon cleanse, it's necessary that it also removes this existing deposits, this this stool membrane we saw in the last slide. It have to refuse also this existing deposits, because when it do not remove these deposits, we have the problem of the self-intoxication again and again. It has also to activate the movements of the bowels, but it do not have to be laxative, because it's a different to support the movement of the bowel and to work with a laxative. And laxative is to put out all the stool in a fast way. To activate the movements of the bowels, you just need enzymes. Enzymes can really good support the movement of the bowel, so that the stool and the food and the small intestinal can transportate faster through the colon system. It regulates the bowel movement. This is the key. It creates also an environment for the beneficial intestinal microbiome. It makes the situation better for the microbiome because of the stabilization of the pH value, and because of the stabilization of the pH value and the support of the microbiome, you have also a stabilize of your own body defense, because we said at the beginning, the bacteria and the immune system, they communicate to each other. And when this communication is good and perfect and works perfect, then the immune system can react in a good way and in a normal way. So you see, the bacteria, they are absolutely necessary. We need also a form of bowel cleansing which cleanses the crypts and the intestinal villi. As you can see in the, when you see a picture of the small intestinal, you see that there are some it's called villi. It's like fingers. They are like fingers. They looks like fingers. They are also between each others, and between these fingers we have this called crypts. This is important to know, because with this structure, the small intestinal makes a bigger ground. Normally we have a really small ground when we just look over the small intestine. When we put the small intestine out and we put like an ironing over the colon, over the small intestinal, we see that the ground is about 400 square meters. This is a lot, and so it's also normal to know why we have to work normally about 3 or 4 months to stabilize the whole microbiome. I saw there was a question which I didn't answer right now. Oh yes, I think we will also upload this webinar, because I understand that it's not possible to take notes like so fast. So if you have any questions for your own personal delivery, please write me an email so I can answer it tomorrow, next week. And I think we also will upload this to that you can take a look again on this. So the forms of bowel cleansing, it's really important that it's not laxative, and this non-laxative producer we have with MikroVeda products, because these MikroVeda products are a part of every important world we need in the colon. It's a part of the probiotic world, it's a part of the prebiotic world, and it's absolutely effective on the pH value stabilization. So we have a called symbiotica. Most of you heard about symbiotica with an N like North Pole. This is not an N like North Pole, it's an M like Marta. It's an symbioticum because we influence and we make a better symbiotic way between human and the bacteria. Our most important work is to influence the bacteria on this way that they can work in a normal way, so they can influence our colon, our immune system, our hormone system, and our health. But in a sensitive way. It's not necessary to work like hard weapons. For example, I knew some people want to take antibiotics when they have non-physiological bacteria. This is not the right way, because with the antibiotics, you reduce all bacteria, also the physiological bacteria. So when you need to intake antibiotics, please support your own microbiome. This is really, really necessary. For me, the perfect cleansing is also a combination of herbal extracts, because in these herbal extracts we have a lot of enzymes which can influence the movement and which influence also the constipation of the stool. It makes the stool a little bit softer. When you have this hard stool, it can make the stool a little bit softer. And it is not a laxative way, so it don't make a hard and fast output of the stool. It makes it in a sensitive way. It also influences the pH value and makes an acidic pH value that the normal physiological bacteria, they feel comfortable and they can rebuild themselves in a faster way, and they make more influence on your colon. So you have also this way to regain your multidiversity. It's also probably, for example, you can lick through your nose of a pig to regain your multidiversity. But we know in studies, because we make some studies also between the difference of farm children and city children, and we saw that farm children only have a good influence of the mucosa when they have contact with more or less 7 different art of animals, like when we have cows and pigs and dogs and cats and, for example, chickens and sheeps and I don't know mice, for example. Then you have 7 different um, parts which were supporting your own immune system. But the most of you and the most of us didn't have this. So we have to take a look on other better solutions than just to lick over an animal's nose. We built products which have, for example, when you take a look on MikroVeda Life. MikroVeda Life is a product which includes herbs extracts, and also 33 active bacterial cultures. These 33 bacterial cultures, and this is the important things, are active when they went through your body into the colon. The most fermented products can't have active bacteria because the most products are sterilized. Sterilized means that the bacteria were cooked up or with some other ingredients, they get into a death stadium. These 33 active bacteria from MikroVeda are a really good team. I colored the important bacteria from studies with the green and the red color. The green ones were really good also on the oral studies, because we have also in our mouth and oral microbiome. When we have a dysbiosis, it can be the chance of carriers and so on can get higher. So we have also to reduce their bad bacteria and unphysiological bacteria. There we have also a bacterial mix with active bacteria, because only active bacteria can make all the functions. For example, to build up substances which can reduce other bacteria, like the lactobacilli or bifidobacteria with the toxin bifidine. So you see, we have the 43 different active bacterial cultures. They are more than a normal probioticum. They're active bacteria, so they come active into the colon. They are not refrigerated like in other products or in a capsule, because in a capsule we have the problem that you have to refresh the bacteria. Normally you have to refresh the bacteria in a neutral liquid. When you swallow the capsule, they refresh in stomach acid or in other acids in the small intestine. So it's not really the clue and not really our goal. Our goal is to get active bacteria in the colon, which also can make a difference into the pH value. We stabilize the pH value, we build up the bacteria, and we influence the immune system or also the bowel movements with different herbs. So MikroVeda is a really good way to regain the health. I work in my ordination about 10 years with MikroVeda products. The new products also like M33 Plus, and also we have some other new products in our pipeline for this year, but for this we will make another information event. So now I will give up to Christian to explain you how MikroVeda works.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marco. An overview about MikroVeda, how the company is acting and how we dealt in the past. So founded in 1998, we produce 100% of our products in Germany. We only import 2 products from Japan. The main reason for that is that these materials which are fermented there, the raw materials, need to be used ultra fresh in order to get the highest quality. We have special certifications like HACCP, so it's a hygiene certification, and of course we produce organic products only. In the meanwhile, we produce 500,000 liters per year, more than 50,000 customers here all over the world, but we have made here a Euro picture, an overview about in which countries we are dealing. And this is very important. If you take a look at companies who work with microorganisms complexes, pure natural way, we are completely independent. Of course, we have a technology network. That means we have partners changing information, participating from new science. However, we are completely independent in terms of know-how and producing the product from the start to the end. This is very important also in terms of future developments. And we have a higher responsibility. We are talking about dietary supplements today. However, we are also producing household products, which are very strong and if people get in touch with MikroVeda, there's also a development that MikroVeda plays an important role in the future life. So using for households, spraying the bread where you lose organic material, of course, during your sleep, and so on. So there's no really end. There's a lot of potential, and so this overview describes best how we deal with our microorganism complex. So you have to imagine it's similar to bricks or making a puzzle. We work with cornerstones. Cornerstones have specific bacteria strains. So the cornerstone is dealt like a cycle, and then we accumulate cycles during multi-step fermentation. We basically work with these 4 parts: lactobacteria, photosynthetic bacteria, that's very important and difficult to handle, bifidobacteria, but also yeasts. And yeast is a quality signal for you. If you take a look at fermentation products, you open it and wait about a while. We work with good yeast and use them. So you have a cycle, the bacteria cycle in there. So bacteria make metabolism products. These metabolism products are important for other bacteria strains, but also bacteria provides organic food for other bacteria in terms of their body. And this is also important for us. Our winning concept is that we work in many areas where the placebo effect is not taking an important role. So we are working, and basically we came from non-placebo topics like farm, so animal stalls, animals, household products. So we worked with a flood crisis in Germany with 15,000 liters with regard to molds, which came along when wall is wet. And these topics proves that products work or not. And we know how to make a dominant microorganism complex, which is described here. We call it a dominance principle, the dominance effect. So that means basically, if you make it very simple, 90% of all bacteria is opportunistic. So whenever there is a regenerative or degenerative and development, the most microorganisms will also move into that direction. And what we are dealing with our products, we're getting a little push, so a little push with a variety of microorganisms, and together with the pH value, the original fermented value, to push into a direction and create a dominance effect. And that's how we're dealing in huge areas. We have provided an overview here. So probiotics and prebiotics are sold widely. And what is the difference regarding the milieu of MikroVeda? So we do not work with any aroma stuff. We have no supplements on our product. It's a pure original product. We have a natural stability, so no sterilization, no durability measures after the production. We have a balanced and diversified microorganism strains product. We work with 33 microorganism strains, and we have a high bio and cell availability. As I told, the dominance effect is proved as we work in for 2 decades now in many non-placebo areas, and we have also high quality standards. So we have organic, vegan, raw food, no alcohol, no histamines, and we have also no allergens in our product. Basically, if we develop and produce, we have a holistic work. That means we take everything in count to establish that our cells will be active and can create any dominant ability after the treatment. These 3 products are the core for rebuilding on the microbiome. We basically distinguish between MikroVeda Life Pure. That is a product where we concentrate on a bit, so it's called sensitive product. However, the pH value is much more acid than in comparison with the MikroVeda Life. We work also with herbs with regard to MikroVeda Live. Both products have 33 microorganism strains. However, the MikroVeda Live Pure is the typical beginner product. It tastes good. It can be used for the whole family. The MikroVeda Live is preferred by therapists and doctors in terms of the fermentation with herbs and plants together with the microorganism strains. Here, the taste is the acid is less aggressive. However, the taste is relatively new. If you drink the first time fermentation product, then the MikroVeda Live is a really new taste. The MikroVeda Live Pure is a good step into fermented liquids. The M30 Plus is our best-seller product, where after rebuilding on the microbiome, you use the M30 Plus for your daily life. We work
And
with 34 products. Yeah, feel free.
And just 1 second, please. I just wanted to say, because I have a lot of experiences with the products, MikroVeda Live Pure is also really good when you have a dysbiosis, beginning dysbiosis. You can also work with them because you have a bigger influence on the pH value. With the MikroVeda Live with herbs, you have a really, really good influence on the digestion. So when you have a digestion problem or when you have a constipation, then you please take MikroVeda Live with herbs. And for all oral problems like a candida in the mouth, you can really good work with the M33 Plus. So it was from my side.
And maybe one example, my third child was born in December, and currently, yeah, my wife has is lactation period, and she works with MikroVeda Live day by day after providing the milk to our son. She, for instance, uses MikroVeda Live for her nipples for recovering. This as description shows that you can work inside, but you can also work outside with our product. We have dermatology tests for our product, as we know that many people also use our products for treating of the feet, for working on the skin, and so on. And we have very good experience there for diverse difficulties which might arise on skin. So there should not be any anxiety to try out. Please be careful with the eyes, but that would be all in that regard.
So this is also why I called it a symbiotic, because we have so much functions with this product. This is absolutely great. We have a probiotic, we have a prebiotic, we have a pH value stabilization. We can stabilize also the pH value from the skin, from the colon, from also the vaginal tract. I have patients with vaginal problems, and we also work with it.
So this is a German labeling of the MikroVeda Live Pure, for instance. So as I told, it's ideal for beginners, children, and very taste sensitive, ideal beginner product, and the typical one. Here you see the MikroVeda Live labeling. So it's the professional product. If you talk about gut health, a typical rebuilding product, also with cleaning extracts in terms of metabolism products in the beginning, which come along with the fermentation. And here you see a picture on the next slide. Marco, I think you need to change the slide. Yeah, thank you. And now you see the picture of the SEM M30 Plus. So gentle and very practical. You can use it every day, and it also it supports your oral microbiome. And this should not be underestimated. Is, for instance, for all people who have psychological difficulties. We heard that we had heard this the first time several years ago from a German professor who is dealing in Asia. In Asia, the children was some years old know about the potential of good fermented products, and there such products are used to deal with psychological difficulties, especially when looking at all the people where typical illnesses arise, which come along with getting older and older. And there you can deal with these products and feeding your microbiome on a very sensitive way. We learned over the years that it makes more sense to work relatively sensibly with customers. So good products, high quality, but not dealing too quick. The process, the way to change is more important than using hard instruments. And especially when taking a look at the midterm or long-term effect. Yeah, in the end, we believe that the support of our nutrition, and this is generally speaking, as well as our body care, should be as natural as possible. This is really important. It goes hand in hand with an holistic approach. So as we look at our household, household is much of our most important issues as we deal with our household each day. So we live within our household. So everybody should take care how he cleans his toilet and so on, and how he washes his fruit and is faced with pesticides and so on. This is really important and thus also pays into our microbiome treatment, as well as on the skin and also on the gut. Thank you very much, Marco, for your presentation regarding the gut health
Was a pleasure.
topic. And if you are interested in, feel free to contact our Greek partner, Evangelos, Managing Director of Hippocratia Diaviosi. And you see the contact details there. There will be a follow-up email to you, also with a link to the record file of this presentation. And we are very happy to offer that there is a potential discount for you, that if you visit the store and use the code MikroVeda 50%, you will be able to order with a rebate within the January. So feel free to try out our products. We are very happy and provide you a high quality. And we are also happy to hear how you find the usage period and how your experiences. So this is very appreciated. It's summarized here. You can visit the shop under this link. There's a voucher code. And now, please also feel free to raise your questions. If maybe you need some time to formulate your questions, we can also answer these afterwards. Please contact Evangelos or contact health.info@mikroveda.de.
There was one question. Just 1 second. I have to search it because I wrote the answer, but I want to read this through and answer it. Is it good eating miso? How much per day? Kimchi as well. Yes, it's good. Kimchi and miso, they are prebiotic supplements. So it feeds on our physiological bacteria, but it can also feed on unphysiological bacteria. So you cannot make a difference between good bacteria and bad bacteria. So when you are secure that you have good bacteria, you can also work with kimchi and miso. When we have this dysbiosis, unphysiological problems and unphysiological bacteria, then we need also this pH value stabilization. And this pH value stabilization you don't get with miso or kimchi. And it's also important to get an acidic pH value, not an alkaline. Alkaline value is not that what we want in the colon. We have in the small intestine at the beginning a small part which is really neutral till alkaline, but at the end of the small intestine and in the colon we have an acidic pH value. So we need this also for the functions of the colon and of the bacteria. Which bacteria do we need to get off a rheumatoid arthritis? This is really hard because for the rheumatoid arthritis, we have to make two things. We have to reduce the inflammation on the place. You can make this also in supported with, for example, zinc. but we need almost immunogene bacteria like Lactobacilli bifidobacteria, coli, and Enterococci. So you can also work as basic with the MikroVeda to influence your physiological microbiome, and for the influence for the influence of the immune system into the inflammation progress. It's also good to make in the acute situation an intake of zinc minimum 30 milligrams per day in the evening. So I don't think we have, I think we have not any questions for today anymore. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I had to thank almost Christian Gerritsen and the company MikroVeda for the organization, and also Evangelos for the organization of the webinar. I want to thank you for your commitment and also for your attention. Evcharisto. And in my little Greece that I knew from my vacancies, I want to wish you Kalispera e Kalimera.